Virgin couple's first night. Millionaire loses control to his wife's seduction and becomes addicted. Nathan Carter had everything: wealth, power, and the perfect life. But one thing he never believed in was love, especially not with a brown-skinned woman. Then came Leah Williams, confident, stunning, and utterly unlike any woman he had ever met. She challenged him, made him feel things he never wanted to admit. Slowly, against his own will, he fell for her. But just when he was ready to surrender to love, a shattering betrayal struck. His so-called friends whispered venomous rumors about Leah's past. A single, damning photo turned his heart cold. Was she really the woman he thought she was? Or had he fallen for a lie? Blinded by rage and deception, Nathan broke their engagement, shattering Leah's heart. She walked away, leaving him drowning in regret. Welcome, dear viewers. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. Your time is precious, and I truly appreciate you spending it with me. That's why I pour my heart and soul into creating stories that are not just words, but emotions. Stories that will touch your heart, make you feel every love, every heartbreak, and every redemption. Today, I bring you a story that is more than just romance. It's a journey of love, betrayal, regret, and an unforgettable first night. A story so powerful that it will stay with you long after you finish watching. I promise you, every second of the story matters. The emotions, the twists, the love. It's all woven together to give you an experience that will move you, surprise you, and melt your heart. So please, don't skip a single moment. Let yourself feel the love, the pain, and the passion. And by the end, I promise, you will not be disappointed. Now, sit back, relax, and let this story take you on an unforgettable journey of love that knows no color, only the beauty of the heart. The morning light filtered through the tall glass windows of the office building, casting a soft golden glow over the immaculate marble floors. Nathan Carter, a 30-year-old millionaire CEO, strolled into his high-rise office, the sound of his polished shoes echoing through the empty halls. His mind was consumed with the usual business matters, reports, meetings, and deadlines. Nathan had built his empire with nothing but ambition and a clear vision. Every day was the same, driven by the need to control, to stay ahead, to be untouchable. He had been used to the life of a powerful, successful man, surrounded by people who admired him, yet remained at a distance. His relationships with women were always superficial, never deep. His charm was his weapon, and it always got him exactly what he wanted. His romantic interests were limited to women from high society, all of them fair-skinned, polished, and refined, like the life he led. To Nathan, love had always seemed like a game, one he played to win. But that day, as he walked into his office, the routine was about to be shattered. Nathan paused at the entrance of the conference room. His gaze swept across the room, scanning the staff gathered for the early morning briefing. And then, almost instinctively, his eyes fell on her, Leah Williams. She was standing by the window, her back straight, her posture elegant, yet effortlessly relaxed. The sunlight from behind cast a soft glow around her, making her look almost ethereal. She was unlike anyone Nathan had ever encountered. Leah had long, dark braided hair that cascaded down her back in a perfect braid, each strand seeming to shine with the depth of her personality. Her skin, a deep, rich brown, was smooth and flawless, and her brown eyes, warm, confident, met his without any hint of uncertainty. Nathan felt something inside him shift, a tightening in his chest. He had always prided himself on his control, his ability to compartmentalize and focus solely on the task at hand. But now, something in her presence made that control feel like it was slipping away. He quickly shook the feeling off. He wasn't the type to be affected by the looks of someone, especially not someone like her. She was different, yes, but Nathan had always been drawn to the polished women of his world, those who fit into the carefully curated life he had built for himself. Women with lighter skin, whose charm and beauty aligned with his own standards. But Leah, she was different in a way that unsettled him, and that was not something Nathan liked. As he made his way to his desk, he tried to concentrate on the task at hand, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Leah. She wasn't like the others. There was an air of mystery about her, something that drew him in, and yet made him feel strangely vulnerable. He watched as she spoke to a few colleagues, her laughter ringing out across the room, a sound both sweet and confident. She wasn't just beautiful, she had an energy, an intelligence, a sharp wit that instantly set her apart. When their eyes met again across the room, Nathan couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. He was used to being admired, but this was different. She didn't fawn over him. She didn't seem intimidated or impressed by his position. Instead, she looked at him with the same intensity she gave to everything around her, unwavering, confident, and completely unaffected by the power he wielded. Nathan tried to ignore the stirring in his chest, the way his heart rate increased when she glanced at him with those knowing eyes. He wasn't used to this, being uncertain, unsure. He was always the one in control, the one who commanded attention without asking for it. But Leah didn't need to ask for anything. Her presence alone was enough. The meeting began, but Nathan found it difficult to focus. His mind kept drifting to the image of Leah, standing by the window, her gaze unwavering, as though she knew exactly who she was and where she was going. She wasn't the kind of woman Nathan usually pursued, but something about her stirred an unfamiliar desire inside him, a curiosity, an intrigue, a need to know more. He noticed the way she spoke, calm, composed, and clear. She didn't speak like most of the women Nathan was used to. She didn't rely on charm or beauty to get by. Leah's words carried weight, intelligence behind every sentence. Nathan, who had spent years building his empire, suddenly felt an unfamiliar stirring of respect for her. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the strength of her mind, her confidence. He was intrigued, even impressed. But Nathan, the master of his world, refused to admit to himself that he was attracted to her. He had always been the one who controlled his emotions, who never let his heart get in the way of his decisions. His attraction to Leah felt like a distraction, a threat to everything he had worked for. He could see his friends' faces, those who had known him all his life, sneering at the thought. A brown-skinned woman. The very idea would be laughable to them. Nathan had never been interested in someone like Leah, someone so different from the world he knew. But as he glanced at her again, he couldn't help but wonder if the world he had built, the world he had worked so hard to keep intact, was exactly what had been keeping him from finding something real. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. He picked it up, forcing himself to focus on the message, but his mind was already elsewhere. Leah's presence lingered in his thoughts, like a scent he couldn't shake off. Despite himself, he couldn't ignore the growing curiosity about her. There was something magnetic about her, something he couldn't explain. And as much as Nathan hated to admit it, the more he tried to push those thoughts aside, the stronger they became. For the rest of the day, he couldn't stop thinking about Leah. He saw her in the hallways, in meetings, and each time, their eyes would briefly meet. There was something there, a tension, an energy that neither of them could deny, and Nathan knew, deep down, that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. But for now, he would keep his distance. He would deny the attraction he felt. He would tell himself that it was nothing more than a passing fascination. After all, it was just a distraction, a fleeting moment in the grand scheme of his life. But deep down, Nathan Carter knew that Leah Williams would be impossible to forget. And somehow, he felt as though his life had already begun to shift in ways he couldn't control. Nathan Carter had always prided himself on being a man of discipline, a man who controlled his emotions rather than being controlled by them. He had never let distractions, especially romantic ones, interfere with his carefully structured life. And yet, no matter how much he tried to suppress it, Leah Williams was becoming an intrusion he couldn't ignore. It wasn't just her striking beauty, though there was no denying that. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet confidence in her every move, the way her voice held unwavering strength whenever she spoke. It was the way she could be both gentle and firm, both mysterious and open. Nathan was used to women vying for his attention, playing by the unspoken rules of wealth and attraction. His past relationships had all been predictable. Elegant women from high society, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, perfectly polished. Women who knew how to behave in a world of power and privilege. Leah, however, was nothing like them, and that disturbed him. A silent obsession. He noticed things about her that he had no business noticing. The way she pushed a stray braid behind her ear when she was deep in thought. The way her eyes sparkled when she was engaged in a conversation that excited her. The way her laughter had a melody of its own, free, unfiltered, real. At every meeting, Nathan found himself watching her, not in the way he observed other employees, but in a way that made him question himself. Why was he so drawn to her? One afternoon, during a company strategy meeting, Leah confidently presented her ideas. She was sharp, articulate, and unwavering in her opinions. While others hesitated in front of Nathan, she stood her ground, challenging perspectives, offering fresh insights. Nathan should have been irritated by her defiance. Instead, he found himself fascinated. When the meeting ended, his usual routine would have been to return to his office, drown himself in work, and forget about her. But his gaze lingered a second too long as Leah gathered her files and walked past him. What is happening to me, he thought, gripping the edge of the table as if grounding himself. A conversation that changed everything. That evening, after a long day at work, Nathan stepped into the office lounge. It was mostly empty, except for a few employees lingering after hours. He poured himself a glass of water, ready to leave, when he heard a familiar voice. Leah. She was sitting by the window, engaged in a conversation with a female colleague. Nathan hadn't planned on eavesdropping, but something about the way she spoke made him pause. I just don't believe love should be about wealth or appearances, Leah was saying. Too many people get caught up in those things and forget what really matters. Her friend chuckled. You're too idealistic, Leah. In the real world, people marry for status, security. Leah shook her head. then that's not real love. Love should be about connection, about how someone makes you feel, how they treat you when no one is watching, not about how much money they have or whether they fit some perfect image. Nathan's grip tightened around his glass. Her words struck him like a slap. He had always believed that love was nothing more than a transaction, a mutually beneficial arrangement between two people who suited each other. Attraction, desire, convenience. Those were the rules he lived by. But Leah's words made him uneasy. For the first time, Nathan questioned himself, an unsettling realization. Later that night, as he sat alone in his penthouse, Nathan couldn't shake the thoughts running through his mind. He had spent his life choosing women based on appearance, status, and reputation. He had built an empire based on power and control, and yet a single conversation from Leah had rattled something deep inside him. Why did her words matter to him? Why did she matter to him? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. This had to stop. Leah was an employee. She was nothing more than an unexpected distraction. A distraction he had to eliminate. Or at least, that's what he told himself. But deep down, Nathan knew the truth. Leah Williams was already under his skin, and there was no escaping it. Nathan Carter had spent weeks trying to ignore the growing tension between him and Leah Williams. He had buried himself in work, drowned himself in meetings, and convinced himself that she was nothing more than a passing distraction. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had lost control the moment she walked into his life. After days of internal struggle, Nathan made a decision he never thought he would. He invited Leah to dinner, a night of unspoken promises. The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in the city, nestled on a rooftop with a breathtaking view of the skyline. Soft music played in the background, the warm glow of candlelight casting flickering shadows on the table between them. Leah looked stunning. Her braided hair cascaded down her back, her brown skin radiant under the dim golden lights. She wore a sleek, elegant dress that hugged her figure just right, confident, effortless, mesmerizing. Nathan had taken countless women to expensive restaurants, yet something about tonight felt different. This wasn't just dinner. This was something else. As the waiter poured their wine, Leah tilted her head, studying him with amusement. I never thought I'd see the day when the great Nathan Carter invited me to dinner. Tell me, why did you change your mind? Nathan leaned back, smirking. You intrigue me. Leah arched a brow. Is that so? I thought you only entertained high society women. He chuckled. Maybe I needed a change. Her laughter was soft, teasing. Or maybe you just needed someone who challenges you. Nathan didn't reply. He simply picked up his glass, meeting her gaze over the rim. She was right, and that terrified him. A dangerous game. As the evening progressed, their conversation shifted from business to personal. Nathan found himself relaxing, letting his guard down in a way he never had before. Leah spoke about her dreams, her ambitions, the things that made her heart race. And then, out of nowhere, she asked, Do you believe in love at first sight? Nathan smirked, swirling his wine. Love is an illusion. Leah leaned forward, her brown eyes holding a challenge. Is it? Or are you just afraid of it? Nathan exhaled, shaking his head. Love is temporary, fleeting. People think they're in love, but it's just attraction, convenience. In the end, it all fades. Leah smiled as if she had been expecting that answer. Slowly, she reached across the table and took his hand in hers. Nathan froze. Her touch was warm, soft yet firm, like she was daring him to resist. With a playful glint in her eyes, she whispered, "I believe I could make you addicted to my love." Nathan's pulse jumped. His fingers instinctively curled around hers, but he quickly withdrew, laughing as if her words meant nothing. "No one can ever addict me," Leah smirked, tilting her head. "We'll see." Her confidence both unsettled and fascinated him. No woman had ever looked him in the eyes and told him she could break him. And yet, as he watched her sip her wine, a part of him wondered, what if she was right? The beginning of something dangerous. As the night came to an end, Nathan walked Leah to her car. The air was crisp, the city lights twinkling behind them. Just as she was about to leave, she turned to him and whispered, "You're not as untouchable as you think, Nathan." He let out a low chuckle. "And you're not as dangerous as you think, Leah." She smiled. "We'll see." Nathan watched as she drove away, his heart still pounding from the way she had touched his hand, from the way her voice had wrapped around him like silk. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who was in control, and that terrified him. Nathan Carter had always believed that emotions were a weakness. Love was just a game, something people used to justify fleeting desires. But Leah Williams was proving him wrong in ways he never imagined. No matter how much he tried to keep things casual, he kept coming back to her. Their evenings became longer, their conversations grew deeper, and with each passing day, Leah chipped away at the walls he had spent years building around his heart. Moments that changed everything. They met in secret, away from the watchful eyes of the high society world Nathan was accustomed to. One evening, he took her on a late-night drive through the city. The roads were empty, the night air crisp, as the wind rushed through the open car windows. Leah laughed as she closed her eyes, feeling the freedom of the moment. "You love this, don't you?" Nathan asked, stealing a glance at her. She turned to him, her brown eyes glowing under the city lights. "I love moments that feel real." Nathan gripped the steering wheel tighter. Leah was always searching for something real, something he had spent his whole life avoiding. Another night, they dined by the river, candles flickering between them. Leah told him about her childhood, her dreams, and the struggles of being underestimated. Nathan listened, mesmerized, not just by her words, but by the raw passion in her voice. She wasn't like the women he usually dated, the ones who only cared about designer clothes and social status. Leah was different. She had depth, a fire in her soul that made him crave more, and that terrified him. Under the stars one evening, after another secret date, Leah insisted on taking a detour. She led him to a secluded hill just outside the city, where the sky stretched endlessly above them. The stars shone brighter there, untouched by the city's artificial lights. Nathan leaned against his car, watching as Leah lay on the grass, gazing up at the sky. "Do you ever wonder if we're just small pieces in something bigger?" she asked. Nathan smirked. "Oh, don't waste time thinking about things I can't control." Leah chuckled. "Of course you don't." A moment of silence settled between them, the cool night air wrapping around them. Then, without thinking, Nathan spoke words he never thought he'd say. "I never thought I could love someone like you." Leah turned her head sharply, her breath catching. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Someone like me," Nathan exhaled. "You know what I mean." Leah nodded. But Nathan didn't miss the flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, not because she didn't feel the same, but because she knew that love came with risks, especially when it involved a man like Nathan Carter. A silent fear. She sat up, hugging her knees. Nathan, what happens if you change your mind? He frowned. What? She looked down at her hands. You've always been certain about what you want. What if one day you wake up and realize this was all a mistake? Nathan reached out, lifting her chin so she had no choice but to look at him. I don't make mistakes, Leah. She smiled softly, but the fear didn't completely disappear. And for the first time, Nathan wondered if he was the one who should be afraid. Afraid that this wasn't just another fling. Afraid that he had already fallen for her. Nathan had never believed in love, but with Leah, everything felt different. She challenged him, made him laugh, and filled his life with something he never knew he needed. Warmth, but love, especially a love as rare as theirs, was never without enemies. Poisonous whispers. Nathan's world was filled with people who thrived on power, manipulation, and control. They weren't his friends, not really. They were wealthy businessmen, elite socialites, and women who had once hoped to claim him for themselves. And they were jealous. At first, the whispers were small, insignificant. Nathan, are you sure about her? I heard she used to keep some questionable company. She's playing you. Women like her know how to trap men like us. Nathan brushed it off, rolling his eyes at their desperate attempts to discredit Leah. He knew who she was, strong, confident, real. But then, the whispers turned into something worse. The photo that changed everything. One night, at an exclusive private club, Nathan was having drinks with his business associates when his closest friend, James Whitmore, leaned in, sliding his phone across the table. You need to see this. Nathan frowned, picking up the phone. On the screen was a blurry photo. A woman who looked exactly like Leah, sitting in the lap of an older, wealthy man. The setting was a luxury hotel, the kind frequented by men who could buy anything, including companionship. Nathan's blood ran cold. Where did you get this? He demanded. James smirked. It's been making the rounds. A friend of mine swears Leah was involved in escorting services a few years ago. You know how these things go. Beautiful woman, rich men, easy money. Nathan clenched his jaw. This could be anyone. The photo isn't even clear. James shrugged. Come on, man. You really think someone like her could have made it into our world without a past? She played the game, and now she's playing you. Nathan slammed the phone onto the table and stormed out of the club. Doubt creeps in. On the drive home, Nathan couldn't shake the unease growing inside him. He knew Leah. She wasn't like that. And yet, the doubts crept in. Why had she never talked about her past relationships? Why did she always avoid certain questions about her life before they met? By the time he reached his penthouse, his head was a mess of contradictions. He needed answers. Now, confrontation. Nathan called Leah. His voice was colder than usual. Come over. She arrived quickly, her face lighting up as she saw him. But as soon as she stepped inside, she sensed something was wrong. What's going on? She asked, concern lacing her voice. Nathan didn't waste time. He pulled out his phone, showing her the photo. Is this you? Leah's brows furrowed as she took the phone. She stared at the image, confusion turning into shock. What? No, this isn't me. Nathan folded his arms. Then explain why people are saying otherwise. Leah's breath hitched. Who's saying this? That doesn't matter. His voice was sharp. Just tell me the truth. Leah took a step forward, her brown eyes pleading. Nathan, you know me. You know me. Do you really think I could do something like this? But the poison had already seeped in. Nathan's jaw tightened. I don't know anymore. Leah's face paled. A deep silence stretched between them. She swallowed hard. You think I would sell myself? Nathan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I don't know what to think, Leah. One day, everything's fine. And the next, there are rumors, photos, fake photos, Leah interrupted, her voice breaking. Nathan exhaled heavily, shaking his head. I need time. Leah stared at him, her body stiffening. Time, or an excuse to walk away. His silence was her answer. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You promised you wouldn't see me the way the world does. And yet, the moment someone taints my name, you don't even hesitate. Nathan looked away, guilt clawing at him, but he said nothing. Leah let out a shaky breath, nodding. I see. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. If you let them take me away from you this easily, then maybe you never really loved me at all. With that, she walked out. And for the first time in his life, Nathan Carter felt empty. The night was restless. Outside, the storm raged, with rain lashing against the glass walls of Nathan Carter's penthouse. Inside, however, an even darker storm brewed, one that would leave two hearts broken beyond repair. Nathan paced the length of his living room, his jaw clenched, hands balled into fists. His mind was drowning in contradictions, in whispers of betrayal, in the unbearable weight of doubt. He had been trying to silence it for days, trying to tell himself that the photo was fake, that the rumors were lies, that Leah, the woman who had stolen his heart in ways he never thought possible, could never be the person they claimed she was. But that tiny voice of insecurity, of suspicion, refused to be ignored. And now he needed the truth. He needed to hear it from her. A confrontation in the storm, a sharp knock on the door, made Nathan turn abruptly. He took a deep breath, pushing down the emotions clawing at his chest, and strode toward the entrance. When he opened the door, Leah stood there, drenched from the rain, her braided hair sticking to her delicate face, her brown eyes searching his with concern. Nathan, she murmured, stepping inside. What's wrong? He closed the door behind her, his expression unreadable. We need to talk. Leah took in his rigid stance, the tension in his shoulders, the coldness in his usually warm blue eyes. Her heart clenched. Something was terribly wrong. What is it? She asked, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. Nathan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his stylish tousled hair. Then, his eyes locked onto hers. Tell me the truth, he said, his voice void of emotion. Were you ever a prostitute? The words hit Leah like a thunderclap. Her breath caught. Her body went still. And for a long, painful moment, the only sound in the room was the rain hammering against the windows. She blinked at him, as if trying to process what he had just said, as if her mind refused to accept that the man she loved, the man who had once held her so gently, was now looking at her like she was a stranger. How could you even ask me that? She whispered, her voice trembling. Nathan's expression hardened. Answer me, Leah. A single tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Is that what you think of me? She asked, her voice breaking. That I sell my body to men. Nathan turned away, staring at the floor, his hands tightening into fists. I don't know what to think anymore. Leah let out a broken laugh, but there was no humor in it. You don't know what to think, she repeated, shaking her head. Nathan, you know me. You know who I am. How could you even entertain something so disgusting? Nathan swallowed hard. I saw the photo, Leah. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. A fake photo, a lie. And instead of trusting me, you let them poison you against me. Nathan closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to block out the pain in her voice. I can't ignore this. Leah's body went cold. She looked at the man she had fallen so deeply in love with, the man she had trusted with her heart, and she realized something that shattered her more than any rumor ever could. He didn't believe her. No matter how much she loved him, no matter how many times he had told her she was different, he still saw her as less. Not as Leah, the woman who had made him laugh, the woman who had challenged him, the woman who had opened his heart to love, but as a brown-skinned woman who could be easily discarded. Leah swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing herself to stay strong, even as her world collapsed. I would have fought the world for you, Nathan, she whispered, her voice shaking. But I won't fight you. She stepped back, her hands trembling. Nathan looked up at her then, something flickering in his eyes, hesitation, pain, regret. But it was too late. Leah gave him one last look, one that held all the love she had ever felt for him, one that he would never forget. Then, without another word, she turned and walked to the door. Her fingers hovered over the handle for a moment. She wanted him to stop her. She wanted him to fight for her. But Nathan said nothing. He just stood there, frozen, watching as she walked out of his life. As soon as the door closed behind her, the storm outside seemed to grow fiercer, the wind howling through the city like a wounded beast. Nathan let out a shaky breath, pressing his hands against his face. He had done the right thing, hadn't he? Hadn't he? Then why did it feel like he had just made the biggest mistake of his life? The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside Leah's heart. Rain pounded against the pavement as she stepped out of Nathan's mansion, her vision blurred with unshed tears. The cold air bit at her skin, but nothing compared to the ice that had settled inside her soul. She had come here with love. She was leaving with nothing. Nathan had looked her in the eyes, the same eyes that once held his deepest confessions, the same eyes that had adored him and accused her of being a prostitute. Her breath came in short gasps as she walked down the empty street, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. She told herself not to cry, but the weight of his betrayal crushed her. Nathan Carter, the man she had dreamed of building a future with, had destroyed her with a single accusation. And the worst part, he never even gave her a chance to explain. Nathan Carter stood motionless in his grand living room, staring at the door Leah had just walked out of. The silence was deafening, yet his mind screamed with conflicting emotions. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw was tight. He had done the right thing, hadn't he? Leah had looked guilty, too guilty. That's what he kept telling himself. But then why did his chest feel so hollow? Nathan walked to the window, watching as Leah's silhouette disappeared into the night. He told himself it was better this way. Better to end things now than be made a fool later. His mind repeated the voices of his so-called friends. She's been with wealthy men before. I saw her at a high-end hotel once. She's not who you think she is. You're too rich to fall for a woman like her. The doubts had seeped into his heart, poisoning it until he could no longer tell truth from lies. But if he was so sure, why did he feel like he had just made the biggest mistake of his life? Days turned into weeks. Nathan buried himself in work, pretending he didn't notice the emptiness in his office without Leah's presence. He convinced himself that life was easier this way. But it wasn't, because every time he walked past her empty desk, his heart ached. Every time he entered his car, he remembered the late-night drives they shared. Every time he tried to sleep, he heard her voice in his mind. I believe I could make you addicted to my love. And worst of all, every time he closed his eyes, he saw her walking away, her broken expression, the tears she had tried to hide, the devastation he had caused. The regret was a slow poison, seeping into his soul, consuming him whole. But Nathan Carter was a proud man, and pride wouldn't let him admit that he had destroyed the only woman who had ever truly loved him. Across the city, Leah tried to rebuild her life. She moved into a small apartment, far from the memories of Nathan. She avoided places they had visited together. The cafe, where he once held her hand across the table. The restaurant where he first confessed that he never thought he could love someone like her. She tried to pretend she was fine, but she wasn't. Nights were the hardest, because no matter how much she tried to erase him, he was still everywhere, his scent lingering in her mind, his touch burning on her skin, his voice whispering through her memories. She had loved him with every fiber of her being, and he had torn her apart with one cruel accusation. Fate, however, had other plans. One evening, Leah walked into a cafe, hoping to drown her pain in coffee. She had barely ordered when she heard two familiar voices behind her, Nathan's friends, the very people who had ruined her life. She turned, heart pounding, unprepared for what she was about to hear. One of them chuckled, stirring his drink. Can you believe Nathan actually bought that story? I know, right? The other laughed. We made it sound so real. I almost feel bad. Leah felt the air leave her lungs. Her hands trembled as the truth settled in her heart. They had lied. Nathan had accused her of being a prostitute because of them. And worse, he had believed them without even asking her the truth. Her blood ran cold. Anger and heartbreak twisted together inside her. She had lost everything because of a lie. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she grabbed a napkin, pulled out a pen, and wrote down every word she had just heard. If Nathan had destroyed her without proof, she would destroy his lies with the truth, and this time she would make sure he never forgot what he had done. Nathan was in his office when it happened. The door slammed open, and before he could react, a familiar voice cut through the air like a blade. You ruined my life over a lie. Nathan's head snapped up. Leah. She stood in the doorway, rage and heartbreak burning in her brown eyes. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He had dreamed of seeing her again, but not like this. She walked to his desk, her heels clicking against the floor with quiet fury, and threw a piece of paper in front of him. Read it, she demanded. Nathan hesitated, but when he picked it up, his entire body turned to ice. It was a confession, a written statement of his own friends, admitting to their lies. His hands trembled as he read it. The room spun. His world shattered. They lied, Leah's voice broke. And you destroyed me because of it. Nathan looked up. His blue eyes filled with something she had never seen before. Absolute devastation. Leah, His voice cracked. Save it, she whispered, stepping back. You didn't even give me a chance to explain, before you threw me away like garbage. Nathan stood, reaching for her, desperation bleeding into his soul. I was wrong, he choked out. I'll do anything to fix this. Leah's eyes softened, just for a moment. Then she turned for the door. I don't know if you can. And then she was gone. Nathan collapsed into his chair, his hands gripping his face. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what it meant to lose something irreplaceable. And he had never felt more alone. Nathan Carter had always been a man of power. He had built an empire, shaped his destiny, and controlled every aspect of his life. But now, for the first time, he was powerless. Powerless to undo the pain he had caused. Powerless to turn back time. Powerless to win back the only woman he had ever truly loved. For days, he searched for Leah, desperate to find her, to see her again. But when he finally did, he realized something. She was no longer the same woman he had abandoned. And he was no longer the same man. Nathan finally found Leah on a quiet afternoon in a charming bookstore cafe. She sat by the window, a book in her hands, her hair in a stylish bun, her posture poised. She looked strong, independent, like a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. But when Nathan stepped closer, his breath caught, because despite her strength, despite her transformation, her eyes still held the pain he had caused. Leah looked up and froze. For a moment, the air crackled with tension, and then she set her book down, lifted her chin, and said, "What are you doing here?" Her voice was calm, but Nathan could hear the unspoken words beneath it. Why now? Why? After everything? Nathan swallowed hard. I need to talk to you. Leah's lips pressed into a thin line. We have nothing to talk about. But when she started to rise, Nathan stepped in front of her. His usual confidence was gone. In its place was raw, desperate sincerity. Please, Leah, just 5 minutes. She studied him for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. 5 minutes. Nathan sat across from her, his heart pounding. He had prepared 100 speeches in his mind, but now that she was in front of him, none of them felt enough. So he did the only thing that felt right. He spoke from his soul. I ruined the best thing in my life, Nathan began, his voice low. I believed lies instead of believing you. And because of that, I lost you. Leah's gaze remained unreadable. Nathan leaned forward, his blue eyes filled with regret. I've spent every second since that night regretting what I did, regretting how I hurt you. His voice broke. And I would give anything, anything, to take it back. Leah's fingers tightened around her coffee cup, her emotions flickering in her eyes. Nathan, she started, but he cut her off. I don't expect you to forgive me, he admitted. I don't even deserve it. But I need you to know that what I felt for you, what I still feel for you, is real. I love you, Leah. Leah inhaled sharply. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Leah's voice came, soft but filled with pain. Do you have any idea what you did to me? She whispered. Nathan's throat tightened. I do now. No, Nathan, you don't. Leah's eyes shimmered. You didn't just break my heart. You made me feel worthless. You made me question myself, my dignity, my truth, my love for you. Nathan flinched. He had known he hurt her, but hearing it in her own words, it shattered him all over again. I trusted you, Leah continued, her voice cracking. I defended you. I gave you my heart, and you threw it away like it was nothing. Nathan's hands clenched. I was a fool, a blind, arrogant fool. Leah shook her head, looking away. You still believed them over me. And I will regret it for the rest of my life, Nathan admitted. But Leah, if there is even the smallest part of you that still cares about me, please give me a chance to prove I can be the man you deserve. Silence. Then Leah stood. I need time, Nathan. Nathan exhaled shakily. I'll wait for as long as it takes. Leah looked at him, her expression unreadable. We'll see if you mean that. And with that, she walked away, leaving Nathan with both hope and fear battling in his chest. Nathan didn't just say he'd wait, he proved it. For weeks, he showed up, not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet ways that spoke louder than words. He supported the charity work Leah was passionate about. He sent books instead of flowers, leaving notes in the pages that spoke of redemption. He never pressured her. He just showed her, every single day, that he wasn't the same man who had once broken her. And slowly, Leah's walls began to crack. She saw the sincerity in his actions. She felt the depth of his regret. And despite everything, she knew she still loved him. One evening, under a sky full of stars, Leah finally faced him. You really waited, she murmured. Nathan, standing before her, nodded. I told you I would. Leah's gaze softened. And if I take you back, Nathan, will you ever doubt me again? Nathan stepped forward, his voice firm. Never. I swear it on everything I am. A tear slipped down Leah's cheek. And then, for the first time in months, she smiled. Nathan let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. Does this mean? Leah bit her lip. Then finally, she whispered the words he had been desperate to hear. I forgive you. Nathan closed the distance between them. He cupped her face, looking into her eyes. And for the first time in forever, he saw it again. The love that had never truly left. He leaned down, their lips met. And in that moment, every broken piece of their past melted into something new, something stronger. They had fought, they had hurt, but they had found their way back to each other. And this time, Nathan would never let her go. Nathan didn't waste time. A week later, he took Leah to a candlelit garden, the same place where he had once told her he didn't believe in love. Now, he dropped to one knee. I was wrong about love, Leah. You taught me what it truly means, and I never want to spend another day without you. Will you marry me? Tears filled Leah's eyes, but this time, they were happy tears. She nodded, smiling. Yes, Nathan. 1,000 times, yes. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into the most passionate kiss of their lives. The past was behind them. The future was theirs to write. Together. The night had finally arrived. The night Nathan Carter had never imagined would be possible. He stood at the altar, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with love. Love for the woman walking toward him, Leah Williams. Dressed in a flowing white gown, she looked like something out of a dream, his dream. Her brown skin glowed under the golden lights. Her braided hair was adorned with delicate pearls. And when she smiled at him, Nathan forgot how to breathe. This was the woman he had almost lost, the woman he had fought for. And today, she was about to become his wife. As Leah reached him, Nathan took her hands, his grip firm but trembling with emotion. The officiant began speaking, but Nathan barely heard a word. All he could see was Leah. Then, it was time for the vows. Nathan took a deep breath, his voice thick with emotion. Leah, I once thought love was just an illusion, a game people played to pass the time. But then you walked into my life, and suddenly, nothing made sense anymore. I fought it. I tried to resist. But in the end, you broke through every wall I had. And now, I don't want to imagine a life without you. His eyes searched hers, his voice dropping to a whisper. I promise to love you, to cherish you, and to never let doubt cloud my heart again. You're my greatest gift, my greatest lesson, and my greatest love. Today, I vow to be the man you deserve. Leah blinked back tears. Then she squeezed his hands and spoke softly, but with a strength that shook him. Nathan, you were the last person I ever expected to fall for. You were arrogant, stubborn, and impossible. She paused, smirking slightly. But then, you changed. You showed me that love isn't about perfection. It's about fighting for each other, through the good and the bad. And I promise you, Nathan Carter, that no matter what comes, I will always fight for us. Nathan swallowed hard, his chest tightening. She still trusted him. She still believed in him. And he swore to himself he would never break that trust again. The officiant smiled. You may now kiss the bride. Nathan didn't hesitate. He pulled Leah into his arms and kissed her deeply, his hands cradling her face. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise. A promise that this time he wouldn't let anything come between them. As their guests erupted into cheers, Leah melted into him, her fingers threading through his hair. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered against his lips, Are you ready for our first night? Nathan smirked, his blue eyes darkening. I should be asking you that. Leah giggled softly, and suddenly Nathan remembered their very first dinner together. The night she had boldly told him, I believe I could make you addicted to my love. Now, he realized she already had. The reception was beautiful, filled with laughter, dancing, and endless congratulations. But Nathan's mind was already on the night ahead. As the night deepened, he watched Leah move across the room, her laughter lighting up the air. She was breathtaking, her gown hugging her body in all the right places. He wasn't the only one looking, and he didn't like that. When another man complimented Leah's beauty, Nathan stepped in instantly, wrapping his arm around her waist and pulling her close. She's the most beautiful woman here, he murmured, but she's also mine. Leah chuckled, jealous already. Nathan leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. Just protective. Leah turned, her brown eyes locking onto his. Then prove it. Nathan's smirk deepened. I plan to. Finally, it was time to leave. Their guests showered them with rose petals as they made their way to the sleek black car waiting for them. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick with anticipation. Nathan placed a hand on Leah's knee, his thumb tracing circles over her skin. You know, Mrs. Carter, I don't think I've ever wanted anything as much as I want you right now. Leah exhaled shakily. She wasn't immune to the tension between them. Then take me home, Mr. Carter. Nathan's jaw clenched, gladly, when they arrived at his penthouse, now their home. Nathan didn't let her step inside alone. Instead, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her over the threshold. Leah gasped, laughing. You're really doing this? Nathan's voice was husky. Traditions matter, don't they? She wrapped her arms around his neck, some more than others. Nathan set her down, their faces mere inches apart. And tonight, which traditions do we follow? Leah's eyes shimmered with something deep, something unspoken. She reached for his tie, slowly pulling him closer. And in that moment, Nathan knew. She was his, and he had been hers from the very beginning. Nathan Carter had always been a man of control. Control over his emotions, control over his desires, control over everything in his life. But tonight, as he stood in the dimly lit bedroom with his wife in front of him, He felt something unravel inside him. He was losing control. Leah stood there, her brown skin glowing under the soft candlelight. Her wedding gown had been breathtaking, but now, as she slowly removed her jewelry, letting her delicate earrings fall onto the vanity, Nathan realized something. She didn't need diamonds or pearls to look like royalty. She simply was. And she was his. His heart pounded as she stepped closer, her warm brown eyes locking onto his blue ones, the same eyes that once challenged him, teased him, and made him question everything he thought he knew about love. Now, those eyes held something deeper: love, devotion, and an unspoken promise. Leah reached up, her fingers grazing his jawline, sending a shiver down his spine. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice softer than he had ever heard it before. "Do you know how long I've waited for this moment?" Nathan swallowed, his hands instinctively finding her waist. He could feel the warmth of her skin, even through the delicate fabric of her dress. "Leah," his voice was husky, filled with emotions he had never voiced before. "I don't think I deserve you." Her brows furrowed, and she placed a gentle finger over his lips. "You do, and nothing will ever change that." Nathan closed his eyes as she traced slow, loving patterns along his cheek. No one had ever touched him like this before, not with this kind of love. Leah tilted her head up, her lips just inches from his. "I love you, Nathan." The words hit him harder than he expected. How could 3 simple words destroy him and put him back together at the same time? His hands tightened around her waist as he whispered, "And I love you more than I ever thought possible." And then he kissed her, not in a rush, not with urgency, but slowly, deeply, reverently, like he was memorizing the taste of her lips, the feel of her warmth, the way she fit against him so perfectly. Leah melted into him, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling him impossibly closer. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this, only them. As the night deepened, Nathan led her toward the bed, his fingers entwined with hers. The soft glow of candlelight flickered across their faces, casting warm shadows that danced across the room. Leah slowly removed his tie, her delicate fingers grazing his skin. He let out a shaky breath as she traced her fingers along his jawline, down to his neck, his shoulders. Every touch sent ripples of fire through his veins. He had always prided himself on being untouchable, on being immune to emotion. But under Leah's hands, he was powerless. She leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead, then his cheek, then his hands. Nathan's breath hitched as she trailed soft, lingering kisses along his neck, his jaw, his temple, each one a silent vow. A vow that she loved him, a vow that she forgave him, a vow that she would always be his. Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tiny tear that had slipped down her cheek. He didn't deserve her, but he would spend the rest of his life proving that he was worthy of her love. As they held each other in the stillness of the night, Nathan finally understood something. Love wasn't about control. Love wasn't about power. Love was surrender. And he had surrendered to Leah long ago. As she rested her head against his chest, their fingers entwined, he whispered, "You were right." Leah tilted her head up, a small smile playing on her lips. "About what?" Nathan chuckled softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You said you could make me addicted to your love." Her smile widened, and Nathan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And now, I never want to live without it." The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the bedroom. Leah stirred, her body wrapped in the warmth of Nathan's arms. It had been a night unlike any other, a night filled with love, passion, and whispered promises. Nathan, the man who once claimed no woman could ever make him addicted, now held on to her like she was the very air he breathed. Leah turned slightly, resting her hand against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a rhythm that now beat for her. She tilted her head up, meeting the piercing blue eyes that had once intimidated her. But now they held nothing but devotion. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," Nathan whispered, his voice still husky from sleep. A smile played on Leah's lips. "Good morning, my love." Nathan leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "I don't think I've ever woken up this happy." Leah chuckled, tracing gentle circles on his chest. "You're just saying that because I finally proved you wrong." Nathan smirked. "Proved me wrong?" She nodded. "I told you I'd make you addicted to my love." Nathan exhaled deeply, pulling her closer. "You didn't just make me addicted, Leah. You became my everything." Marriage changed Nathan in ways he never thought possible. Once, he had been a man who only valued power and wealth. Now, he found himself valuing every small moment he shared with Leah. Morning coffees, where she would tease him about his messy hair. Evening walks, where he would hold her hand like he never wanted to let go. Late night conversations, where they would dream about their future. Nathan made it his mission to cherish her, to make up for every tear she had ever shed because of him. He planned surprise dinners, brought her flowers, just because, and held her in his arms every chance he got. One evening, as they sat on their balcony, watching the sunset, Nathan took Leah's hand in his. "Do you ever regret giving me a second chance?" Leah turned to him, her brown eyes soft with love. "I don't believe in regrets, Nathan. I believe in love, and love always deserves a second chance." His heart clenched. How had he ever doubted her? How had he ever let her go? Months passed, and their love only deepened. Nathan had built an empire with his own hands, yet he found his greatest success in Leah's happiness. Whenever he came home after a long day, she was there, waiting, smiling, making him forget the stress of the world. One evening, he walked into the house and found Leah in the kitchen, her apron slightly messy with flour. "What are you doing?" he asked, amused. Leah looked up, flashing him a playful smile. "I'm baking. You said you loved cookies, so I thought I'd surprise you." Nathan chuckled, stepping closer. "You're the surprise, Leah, every single day." She blushed as he leaned in, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I never thought I could love someone this much," he murmured. Leah placed her hands on his chest, her eyes filled with the same love he had come to depend on. "And I never thought I could forgive someone so deeply. But you proved to me that real love is worth fighting for." Nathan cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. "I will spend every day proving to you that I'll never let you go again." And as Leah wrapped her arms around him, Nathan knew his life had truly begun the moment he fell in love with her. The morning sun streamed through the bedroom window, casting a soft golden glow over the room. Leah sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she held the small white pregnancy test in her palm. Positive. Her heart bounded. She was pregnant. Tears welled in her eyes, tears of joy, of excitement, of disbelief. She placed a hand over her stomach, whispering, "Nathan is going to be a father." She imagined his reaction, his deep blue eyes widening in shock before filling with warmth. Would he cry? Would he lift her off the ground in happiness? A soft smile spread across her lips. She was about to find out. Nathan walked into the house later that evening, exhausted from a long day of meetings. He loosened his tie, his gaze instantly searching for Leah. She was his peace, his safe place. He found her in the dining room, standing next to the elegantly set table. Candles flickered softly, the warm scent of roses filling the air. Nathan's lips curled into a smirk. What's all this? A romantic dinner for no reason. Leah bit her lip, excitement bubbling inside her. There's always a reason to celebrate love. Nathan stepped closer, his hands resting on her waist. Then let's celebrate. She reached behind her, grabbing a small wrapped box from the table. Before we eat, I have a gift for you. Nathan arched an eyebrow. A gift? What's the occasion? She simply smiled and placed the box in his hands. Open it and see. Nathan chuckled, unwrapping it slowly. Inside, he found a tiny pair of baby shoes. His fingers froze. His breath hitched. Slowly, he lifted his gaze to Leah, confusion and hope flickering in his blue eyes. Leah. Her voice was soft, but filled with uncontainable joy. Nathan, I'm pregnant. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, in a heartbeat, Nathan dropped the box and pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest. Oh my God, Leah. His voice was thick with emotion. He buried his face in her hair, his arms tightening around her. We're going to have a baby. Leah laughed through her happy tears. Yes, Nathan. We're going to be parents. Nathan pulled back slightly, cupping her face with both hands. You have no idea how much I love you. She leaned into his touch, her brown eyes shining. I think I do. That night, Nathan barely let go of Leah. He kept his hands on her stomach, whispering words of love to the tiny life growing inside her. I never thought I could be this happy. His voice was raw, filled with genuine emotion. Leah ran her fingers through his dark, slightly messy hair. I told you I'd make you addicted to my love. Nathan chuckled, his lips pressing against her forehead. You did. And now, you've given me something even more precious. He leaned down, resting his forehead against her stomach. Hey, little one. It's your dad. I can't wait to meet you. Tears pricked Leah's eyes as she watched the man who once claimed he could never fall in love, now worshipped the very ground she walked on. She placed a hand over his, whispering, Our love created a new life, Nathan. This is our forever. And as Nathan kissed her stomach softly, he made a silent vow he would protect them, cherish them, and love them with every fiber of his being. Their love story wasn't just about romance anymore. It was about family. The hospital room was filled with an overwhelming sense of joy, exhaustion, and love. Leah lay on the bed, her face glistening with sweat, but her eyes held the softest glow of happiness. The moment had finally come. She had brought not one, but 2 lives into the world. Nathan stood frozen, staring at the 2 tiny, swaddled babies in the nurse's arms. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process the miracle before him. Twins, a boy and a girl, his children. The nurse gently placed them in his trembling hands. The moment their tiny fingers curled around his, something inside him broke. A dam of emotions he never knew he had. Tears welled in his deep blue eyes as he looked at Leah, his voice cracking. Leah, they're perfect. Leah smiled weakly, her brown eyes filled with love. You're holding our dreams, Nathan. Nathan sat beside Leah on the hospital bed, carefully cradling his newborn son in one arm and his daughter in the other. He had never felt anything like this before. A love so fierce, so overwhelming, it made his chest tighten. "Hey, little ones," he whispered, his voice full of wonder. "I'm your dad." The tiny boy let out a soft yawn, his tiny fists flexing in the air, while his sister nestled deeper into Nathan's warmth. Leah giggled weakly. "Looks like they already love you." Nathan let out a breathless chuckle, his gaze shifting between his children. "I love them more than anything." He looked at Leah, his expression turning serious. "And I love you, Leah, more than I ever thought I could love anyone." Leah reached out, gently placing her hand over his. "Our love created them, Nathan. It doesn't matter where we come from or what color our skin is. It only matters that our hearts are beautiful." Nathan swallowed hard, her words sinking deep into his soul. Love had no color. It was never about skin. It was never about race. It was about the way their souls connected. Days later, when they arrived home, Nathan was in full protective father mode. "Leah, don't carry anything. You just gave birth." "Nathan, I can hold my own babies." She laughed, cradling their daughter. "Fine, but I'm doing everything else." He kissed her forehead. "You just rest. Beautiful." Leah's heart swelled. This was the same man who once claimed he could never love a brown-skinned woman. Now, he was wrapped around her finger and worshipping the ground she walked on. Late that night, as they lay in bed with their twins in a crib nearby, Nathan traced his fingers along Leah's hand, his voice soft. "You were right, Leah. Love doesn't see color. It sees the heart." She smiled, leaning into his embrace. "And your heart is the most beautiful thing I've ever known." Nathan held her tightly, vowing that for the rest of his life, he would cherish her, their love, and the incredible family they had built together. The sun peeked through the sheer curtains, casting a golden glow across the master bedroom. Nathan stirred awake, his arm instinctively tightening around Leah's waist as she lay beside him, her soft breathing a melody he had grown addicted to. His blue eyes fluttered open, only to find the most beautiful sight of his life, his wife. She was still sleeping, her braided hair resting against her shoulder, her brown skin glowing under the soft morning light. Nathan smiled, brushing his lips against her forehead. How did he get so lucky? He had once believed love was an illusion, something people created out of desire or convenience. But now, he knew that love was the most real thing in the world. Leah stirred, a sleepy smile forming on her lips. Morning," she whispered, her voice still drowsy. Nathan cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. "Good morning, my love." She nestled closer, her fingers grazing his jawline. "Are you staring at me again?" He chuckled. "Always." Her laughter was the most beautiful sound. Nathan leaned down, kissing her softly, deeply, lovingly. Every day, he tried to show her how much he adored her. He had nearly lost her once, and he would never make that mistake again. Their mornings were filled with love, laughter, and the tiny giggles of their newborn twins. Nathan would watch in awe as Leah rocked their baby girl in her arms, whispering lullabies while their son curled against his chest, his tiny fingers gripping Nathan's shirt. "I still can't believe we have them," Nathan murmured one evening as they sat on the couch, their babies resting in their arms. Leah smiled, her eyes shining. "They're our little miracles." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple. "You are my miracle, Leah." She turned to look at him, her brown eyes filled with love. And you're mine. Months passed, and their bond only grew stronger. Nathan went from being a man who never believed in love to one who couldn't live without it. He cherished every moment. The way Leah laughed, the way she kissed their children goodnight, the way she held his hand like he was her entire world. One evening, as they stood on their balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Nathan pulled Leah into his arms. "Do you remember our first candlelight dinner?" he asked, his lips brushing against her hair. She grinned. "Of course. I told you I would make you addicted to my love." He turned her to face him, his blue eyes locking onto hers. "And you did. Completely." Leah caressed his face, whispering against his lips, "I love you, Nathan. Forever." He kissed her, long and slow. Forever and always. No matter their past, no matter their differences. Love had no color, only hearts that beat for one another.